I concealed from my child the truth about my $40,000 monthly earnings, despite his constant observation of my modest lifestyle. When he extended an invitation to dine with his spouse's relatives visiting from distant lands, I chose to test their character by masquerading as an impoverished and unsophisticated parent. The instant I crossed the threshold of that establishment, everything transformed. The events of that evening shattered my daughter-in-law and her family in ways they couldn't have anticipated. Believe me when I say they earned every moment of it. Allow me to illuminate how this situation unfolded. Let me reveal my authentic identity, because Marcus, my 35-year-old offspring, remained ignorant of his mother's reality. In his perception, I existed merely as the woman departing before dawn for the workplace, returning exhausted when darkness fell, preparing meals from whatever provisions the refrigerator contained. Just another worker, perhaps a clerical assistant, someone unremarkable, nothing extraordinary. I deliberately avoided correcting his assumptions. I never disclosed that my monthly compensation reached $40,000, that I'd served as a senior administrator at an international conglomerate for nearly 2 decades, authorizing multi-million-dollar agreements and influencing decisions affecting thousands of individuals. What purpose would revelation serve? Financial resources never represented something requiring display like a medallion on a wall. My upbringing occurred during an epoch where self-respect resided internally, where restraint possessed greater value than empty declarations. Consequently, I protected my reality. I resided in the identical, unpretentious dwelling for numerous years. I utilized the same hide leather satchel until it deteriorated. I purchased garments at bargain establishments, prepared sustenance at home, conserved everything, invested everything, and accumulated wealth in quietness. Genuine authority doesn't announce itself. Genuine authority watches. And I observed intently when Marcus contacted me that Tuesday afternoon. His vocal tone sounded unusual, anxious, reminiscent of his childhood when he'd committed some transgression. "Mother, I must request a favor. Simone's relatives are arriving from overseas. This marks their inaugural visit here. They wish to meet you. We're arranging a meal Saturday evening at a dining establishment. Please attend." Something in his inflection generated discomfort within me. This wasn't the voice of a son inviting his parent. This was the voice of someone requesting not to face embarrassment, to conform, to create a favorable impression. "Have they received any information regarding me?" I inquired with composure. Silence ensued. Then Marcus stammered, "I informed them you're employed in an administrative facility, that you reside alone, that you're uncomplicated, that you possess limited means." There existed the descriptor, uncomplicated, as though my entire existence could be compressed into that wretched adjective, as though I constituted a difficulty requiring apology. I inhaled profoundly. Acceptable, Marcus. I shall be present. I disconnected and surveyed my living quarters, aged yet comfortable furnishings, surfaces lacking costly artwork, a compact television, nothing designed to impress anyone. At that instant, I determined that if my son perceived me as an impoverished woman, if his wife's family arrived prepared to render judgment, then I would provide exactly what their expectations demanded. I would masquerade as destitute, unsophisticated, and desperate, a parent barely surviving. I desired to experience directly how they approached someone possessing nothing. I wished to observe their genuine nature because I harbored suspicions. I suspected Simone and her family represented the category of individuals who evaluated others by their financial accounts. And my intuition rarely errs. The morning before, preparation and reflection. Saturday morning arrived with crystalline sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains. I awakened at 5:30, as customary. 4 decades of professional discipline had programmed my internal rhythms. I prepared strong black coffee and positioned myself at my modest kitchen table, contemplating the evening ahead. The apartment surrounded me in familiar silence. Every object possessed history, memory. The scratched wooden table where Marcus completed his schoolwork. The faded armchair where I'd nursed him through childhood illnesses. The chipped ceramic mug, a Mother's Day gift from his elementary years, that I clutched between my palms. I reflected on the journey that transported me to this moment. The struggles, the sacrifices, the relentless determination that characterized my existence. I remembered being 23, pregnant, abandoned, terrified. I remembered the humiliation of requesting assistance from family members who rejected me with disgust. I remembered the landlady who threatened eviction when my pregnancy became visible. I remembered the supervisor who suggested I handle the situation if I desired to retain my position. But I also remembered the compassion. The elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who babysat Marcus without accepting payment, claiming she enjoyed his company. The night school instructor who loaned me textbooks when I couldn't afford them. The junior executive who recommended me for promotion despite my lack of formal credentials, recognizing my capabilities exceeded my resume. These remembrances shaped me, molded my understanding of humanity's complexity. Some individuals reveal kindness during adversity. Others display their worst characteristics when they perceive advantage. Tonight would illuminate which category Simone's parents occupied. I spent the morning deliberately. I cleaned my apartment meticulously, though it remained perpetually tidy. I organized documents, though they required no organization. These actions provided distraction, postponing the inevitable preparation for this evening's performance. At noon, I prepared a simple lunch, vegetable soup and whole grain bread. While consuming this meal, I reviewed my strategy. I would arrive appearing financially struggling but maintaining dignity. I would speak minimally, observe extensively. I would allow them sufficient space to reveal their authentic selves without interference. The afternoon progressed slowly. I attempted reading but couldn't concentrate. I considered telephoning Marcus, canceling, avoiding this entire uncomfortable scenario. But no, I required knowledge. For his protection. For my comprehension. For the future of their marriage. At 4 o'clock, I commenced my transformation. I retrieved the most unflattering garments from my wardrobe's depths, the pale gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress that resembled something from a charitable donation center. I examined it critically. Perfect. Sufficiently worn to suggest financial hardship, yet clean enough to indicate self-respect despite poverty. I selected aged, scuffed shoes, comfortable but undeniably inexpensive. I deliberately chose not to wear jewelry, not even the modest watch Marcus gifted me for my 50th birthday. I pulled my hair into an untidy ponytail, allowing several strands to escape messily. I avoided makeup entirely, permitting my natural complexion, lined from years, marked by experience, to show unadorned. I studied my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back appeared exhausted, defeated, forgettable. A woman life had weathered and diminished. Someone easily overlooked, readily dismissed, naturally underestimated. Perfect, I whispered to my reflection. Absolutely perfect. The journey. Contemplation in transit. I summoned a taxi rather than utilizing my personal vehicle, a deliberately modest sedan I'd maintained for 12 years. The driver arrived promptly at 6:15. A middle-aged gentleman with kind eyes and weathered hands. "Good evening, ma'am. Where to?" he inquired pleasantly. I provided the restaurant's address. His eyebrows elevated slightly. "That's quite an upscale establishment," he observed. "Special occasion?" "Meeting my son and his wife's family," I responded quietly. "First encounter." He nodded understandingly. "Nervous?" "Something resembling that," I admitted. As we navigated through the city's congested streets, I observed the passing scenery. The transformation from my middle-class neighborhood to progressively affluent districts occurred gradually. Buildings became taller, cleaner, more imposing. Automobiles grew more luxurious. Pedestrians' attire became more expensive. The driver, perhaps sensing my contemplative mood, maintained respectful silence for several minutes. Then he spoke again. "May I share something, ma'am? I've been operating this cab for 25 years. I've transported all varieties of people, wealthy, poor, everything between. You know what I've learned." "What's that?" I asked, genuinely curious. The people who worry most about making good impressions are usually the best people. The ones who should worry never do. His words resonated unexpectedly. That's remarkably insightful, I told him. He chuckled softly. Just observation from years of watching humanity. You seem like good people, ma'am. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Thank you, I whispered, unexpectedly moved by this stranger's kindness. We continued in comfortable silence. I noticed my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. Tonight would provide answers. Tonight would confirm or contradict my suspicions. Tonight would determine how I proceeded with my relationship to Simone's family. The taxi eventually entered the exclusive district where the restaurant resided. Immaculate sidewalks, designer boutiques, art galleries with pieces costing more than most annual salaries. This environment belonged to those who never questioned expenses, who never calculated costs, who never experienced the anxiety of insufficient funds. I'd navigated these circles professionally for years, conducting business lunches at establishments like this, negotiating contracts over expensive wines, discussing multi-million-dollar deals while consuming artistically arranged miniature portions. But always in that context, I wore my professional armor, tailored suits, quality accessories, the confident demeanor of someone belonging there. Tonight was different. Tonight I arrived as someone these surroundings would typically exclude. Tonight, I was the outsider. The taxi decelerated, approaching the restaurant. Through the vehicle's window, I observed elegant patrons entering and exiting. Women in designer dresses, men in custom suits, everyone radiating that particular confidence wealth provides. Here we are, ma'am, the driver announced, parking before the entrance. I paid the fare, including a generous gratuity. He noticed the amount and smiled warmly. Thank you, ma'am. And remember, you're worth just as much as anyone in there. Don't let them tell you different. If only he knew, I thought. If only he understood the irony of his encouragement. I exited the vehicle, straightened my wrinkled dress, gripped my faded canvas tote, and approached the entrance. The doorman, clad in pristine white gloves and formal attire, regarded me with barely concealed surprise. His expression suggested confusion about how someone of my apparent means discovered this location. Good evening, I said quietly, moving past him before he could question my presence. I entered, and immediately the atmosphere enveloped me. Hushed conversations, gentle classical music, the subtle scent of expensive cuisine and aged wine. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. And there, near the expansive windows overlooking the city, I spotted them. My son, his wife, and the two individuals who would soon reveal their authentic nature. I inhaled deeply, adopted the posture of someone unaccustomed to such environments, and advanced toward the table. The performance was about to commence. The encounter, first impressions and hidden judgments. Marcus noticed my approach first. I observed the sequence of emotions crossing his features, recognition, shock, discomfort, then something resembling shame. His eyes widened as they traveled from my wrinkled dress to my worn shoes to my faded bag. "Mother," he said, his voice tight with barely suppressed emotion. "You came. Naturally, son." "I'm here," I replied, deliberately making my voice small, timid, the voice of someone uncertain and intimidated by luxurious surroundings. Simone rose from her seat, her cream-colored designer dress flowing elegantly. She approached and delivered a quick, cold kiss to my cheek, mechanical, perfunctory, devoid of genuine warmth. "Mother-in-law, how lovely to see you," she said, though her eyes communicated the opposite. Her gaze flickered briefly over my appearance, and I detected the flash of embarrassment crossing her features. She gestured toward her parents with an almost apologetic tone. "Father, mother, this is Marcus's mother." I turned my attention to them fully for the first time. Veronica sat regally, her posture impeccable, her emerald green dress adorned with sequins that captured the light with every slight movement. Jewelry decorated her neck, wrists, and fingers, not tasteful accent pieces, but bold statements of wealth. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her sharp cheekbones and calculating eyes. Those eyes examined me now, traveling deliberately from my face downward, cataloging every detail of my appearance. I witnessed the assessment occurring behind her gaze, the rapid calculations, the instant categorization, the immediate judgment. Her hand extended toward me, cold, brief, limp. The handshake of someone who didn't want to touch something unclean. "A pleasure," she said, her tone contradicting her words entirely. Franklin, seated beside her, wore an immaculate gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His watch, oversized, ostentatious, clearly expensive, caught the light as he extended his hand for an equally weak handshake. "Charmed," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. I moved toward the chair at the table's end, the position furthest from them, naturally. Nobody assisted me in seating. Nobody inquired about my comfort. Nobody offered the small courtesies typically extended to dinner guests. I settled into my chair quietly, arranging my canvas tote on my lap, keeping my hands folded, maintaining the posture of someone feeling out of place and acutely aware of it. The waiter materialized almost immediately, a young man in formal attire, carrying elaborate menus bound in leather with gold lettering. "Good evening," he said with professional warmth. "May I offer you something to drink while you review our menu?" Veronica spoke before anyone else could respond. "Water for everyone, I think. Still, not sparkling. We're not celebrating anything particularly special tonight." Her eyes flickered toward me as she spoke. The waiter nodded and departed. Veronica's comment hung in the atmosphere, subtle yet unmistakable. "We're not celebrating because this isn't a joyous occasion. Because your presence here is merely obligatory, not desired." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Simone studied her napkin intently. Franklin checked his expensive watch as though already bored. I simply waited, maintaining my humble posture, allowing the silence to expand. Veronica finally broke it. "So, Ilara," she began, my name sounding somehow diminished in her pronunciation. "This is quite an impressive establishment, isn't it? Have you dined at places like this before?" "No," I answered softly. "This is my first time somewhere so elegant." "I thought as much," Veronica responded, a small smile playing at her lips. "It can be quite overwhelming, can't it? All the formality, the etiquette, knowing which fork to use." She laughed lightly, as though making a joke, but her words carried an edge. "Yes," I agreed meekly. "Quite overwhelming." Franklin leaned back in his chair, observing me with open curiosity. "Marcus mentioned you work in an office. What sort of work exactly?" "Administrative tasks," I replied, keeping my answers brief, humble. "Filing, organizing, answering phones. Simple things." "Ah," Franklin nodded, exchanging a glance with Veronica. "Essential work, certainly. Every organization needs people to handle such tasks." The condescension in his tone was unmistakable, the implication that my work was menial, forgettable, performed by replaceable individuals without particular skill or value. The waiter returned with our water glasses, placing them carefully before each of us. He then presented the menus, opening mine first out of politeness. I stared at the menu, genuinely pretending confusion. The text was printed in French with English descriptions underneath. The dishes had elaborate names: pan-seared scallops with truffle beurre blanc, Wagyu beef Wellington with foie gras, Mediterranean branzino en papillote. More significantly, I noticed the prices, or rather, the absence of prices. This was the type of establishment where prices appeared only on one menu, typically the host's, to avoid guests feeling uncomfortable about costs. But from my angle, I could see Franklin's menu. The appetizers started at $45. The main courses ranged from $80 to $150. The wine list featured bottles costing hundreds, some thousands. I allowed myself to appear confused, overwhelmed, lost. Veronica noticed, as I knew she would. "Do you need assistance with the menu, Ilara?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. Yes, please, I responded, my voice small. I don't understand what these dishes are. Veronica sighed, not heavily, but audibly enough for everyone to hear. Of course. Let me help you. Perhaps something simple would be best. Nothing too complicated, nothing too expensive. We wouldn't want to overindulge. There it was. The first direct reference to cost, to my presumed inability to afford such things, to my place in their economic hierarchy. Thank you, I murmured. That's very kind. Veronica ordered for me without further consultation, a basic pasta dish, the least expensive item on the menu. For herself and Franklin, she ordered elaborately. Multiple courses, expensive wines, premium preparations. Marcus attempted to speak. Mother, would you prefer something? Marcus, Veronica interrupted smoothly. I'm sure your mother is perfectly satisfied with something simple. Not everyone enjoys rich, complicated cuisine. Sometimes simpler tastes reflect simpler preferences. Another smile, another subtle insult. I nodded meekly. Yes, simple is good. I'm not accustomed to fancy food. Simone remained silent throughout this exchange, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth, her fingers nervously adjusting her napkin. Franklin poured wine for himself and Veronica, an expensive red the waiter had recommended. He didn't offer any to me, didn't even acknowledge the possibility I might want some. Veronica took a sip, swirled it in her glass, and made an approving sound. Excellent vintage. You can taste the quality immediately. This is from an exclusive French vineyard we visited last spring, Franklin. Remember. Indeed, Franklin replied. Beautiful region. We should return sometime. And thus it began, the litany of their experiences, their possessions, their wealth. They spoke as though I wasn't present, or rather, as though I was present specifically to hear and be impressed by their accomplishments. Veronica detailed their recent European tour, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, private guides, exclusive restaurants. Franklin mentioned his business ventures, real estate holdings in 3 countries, investment portfolios, luxury vehicles. They name-dropped designers, exclusive clubs, influential people they knew. They discussed their home, which was apparently not a house but an estate, with its multiple bedrooms, home theater, wine cellar, and staff. Throughout this monologue, they periodically glanced at me, clearly expecting reactions of awe, envy, or intimidation. I provided exactly what they wanted: widened eyes, impressed nods, murmured expressions of amazement. How wonderful, I said repeatedly. How impressive. How fortunate you are. And with each compliment, I watched Veronica's satisfaction grow. She was feeding on this, deriving pleasure from the contrast between their abundance and my apparent poverty. The appetizers arrived, their plates elaborate, artistic, expensive. Mine was simple, small, unremarkable. Veronica cut into her dish delicately. This cost $65, she announced casually. But quality deserves proper investment, don't you agree, Elara? Yes, of course, I agreed quietly. Not everyone can afford such things, naturally, Veronica continued. But those of us who can have a responsibility to appreciate fine craftsmanship, excellent ingredients, skilled preparation. She paused. I'm sure you understand, even if you haven't experienced it personally. Marcus's knuckles were white where he gripped his fork. Simone had barely touched her food. Franklin nodded along with his wife's every word. And I simply absorbed it all, every insult, every condescension, every deliberate slight. I stored them carefully, precisely, like weapons I would eventually deploy. But not yet. Not quite yet. The performance required patience. The revelation required proper timing. And I had decades of experience knowing exactly when to strike. For now, I remained the humble, overwhelmed, poor mother. For now, I let them believe they held all the power. For now, I continued watching, waiting, observing as they revealed exactly who they were. The escalation, wealth as weapon. The main courses arrived with theatrical presentation. the waiter describing each dish's components, preparation methods, and special ingredients as though narrating a performance. Veronica's plate held what appeared to be a tiny portion of meat surrounded by artistic drizzles of sauce and microgreens arranged like miniature sculptures. Wagyu beef, she announced unnecessarily. Japanese, A5 grade. The most expensive beef classification in the world. This particular cut costs $145. She smiled at me. Have you ever tasted Wagyu, Elara? No, I replied softly. I haven't. It's extraordinary, Veronica continued. The marbling, the texture, the flavor, incomparable to ordinary beef. But then, not everyone has the opportunity to experience such things. She cut a small piece, placed it in her mouth, and closed her eyes dramatically. Magnificent. My pasta arrived, acceptable looking but clearly the budget option, the dish they serve people they don't want to waste premium ingredients on. Franklin received some elaborate seafood preparation involving lobster, scallops, and something described as caviar beurre blanc. He, too, made a performance of tasting it. Exceptional, he declared. You can taste the quality of the ingredients immediately. This is what separates true fine dining from ordinary restaurants, the unwillingness to compromise on quality regardless of cost. He looked directly at me as he said this, making certain I understood the implication. Quality costs money. Money I presumably didn't have. Therefore, quality remained beyond my reach, beyond my experience, beyond my world. I ate my pasta quietly. It was actually quite good, but I made no comment, maintaining my posture of someone too intimidated to offer opinions in such elevated company. Veronica dabbed her lips with her napkin. Elara, Marcus tells us you live alone. That must be quite challenging at your age. I manage, I responded simply. I'm sure you do, Veronica said with false sympathy. Though it can't be easy, especially on a limited income. How do you handle expenses? Rent, utilities, food, medical costs? It must require constant careful budgeting. Yes, I admitted. I budget carefully. I save where possible. Veronica sighed dramatically. How admirable. Truly. I have tremendous respect for people who must struggle financially. It builds character, I suppose. She paused. Though of course, one always wishes things could be easier, more comfortable. Franklin interjected, Veronica and I have always believed in providing security for our family. We never wanted Simone to experience financial stress or uncertainty. That's why we invested heavily in her education, her development, her future. How wonderful, I murmured. Indeed, Veronica agreed. We spared no expense, the finest schools, international experiences, language tutors, music lessons, everything that shapes a well-rounded, cultured individual. She looked at me pointedly. Were you able to provide similar opportunities for Marcus? The question was designed to wound, to highlight my supposed failures as a parent, to contrast their lavish provision with my presumed inability to offer equivalent advantages. I did what I could, I replied quietly. Marcus attended public schools. He had a modest upbringing. Public schools, Veronica repeated, managing to make it sound like affliction. Well, education quality varies tremendously, doesn't it? Some children receive world-class preparation, while others make do with whatever resources are available. She smiled. But as you say, you did what you could. No one can fault a parent for that. Except she was faulting me. Clearly, deliberately, cruelly. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tightly, I worried he might crack a tooth. Mother gave me everything I needed, he said, his voice strained with suppressed anger. I had a good childhood. Of course you did, darling, Veronica replied patronizingly. No one is suggesting otherwise. We're simply acknowledging that different families have different resources, different capabilities, different levels. Levels. The word hung in the air like a judgment. They were a higher level. We were a lower level. The hierarchy was established, acknowledged, reinforced. Simone finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Mother, perhaps we could discuss something else?" "Why?" Veronica asked with feigned innocence. "We're simply having an honest conversation about family, about life circumstances, about reality. Nothing wrong with honesty, is there?" She looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to agree, to validate her cruelty by accepting it without protest. "No," I said quietly. "Nothing wrong with honesty." "Exactly," Veronica smiled triumphantly. She took another sip of her expensive wine. "You know, Elara, I've been thinking. As family, we should support each other, shouldn't we?" Here it comes, I thought. The offer. The bribe. The attempt to buy me off. Support is important, I agreed carefully. Veronica leaned forward slightly, adopting what she probably believed was a caring expression. "Franklin and I have discussed this, and we believe we should help you. Financially, I mean." Marcus started to object, but Veronica silenced him with a raised hand. "Please, let me finish. This is important." She turned back to me. "We understand that at your age, with your limited income, living alone must be stressful. We imagine you worry constantly about making ends meet, about unexpected expenses, about the future." "Everyone worries about the future," I responded neutrally. "True," Veronica acknowledged. "But some people worry more than others. Those with resources worry less. Those without resources worry constantly." She paused dramatically. "We'd like to reduce your worries, Elara. We'd like to offer you a monthly allowance." There it was. The proposition clearly stated. "An allowance?" I repeated, making my voice uncertain, confused. "Yes," Veronica continued. "A modest amount, perhaps $500 or $700 monthly. Enough to make your life more comfortable, to reduce Marcus's concern about you, to alleviate some of that financial pressure you must feel constantly." She made it sound generous, charitable, kind. But I heard what she wasn't saying. I heard the conditions that would inevitably follow. "That's very generous," I said slowly. "We think so," Franklin added. "We're not obligated to do this, you understand. You're not our direct family. But we believe in helping where we can, especially when it benefits everyone involved." "Benefits everyone?" I asked softly. "Certainly," Veronica replied. "You would have additional financial security. Marcus would worry less about your welfare. And Simone and Marcus could focus on building their life together without the distraction of worrying about extended family needs." Distraction. Extended family. The words revealed the truth beneath the supposed generosity. "I see," I murmured. Veronica smiled, believing she had me convinced, believing I would accept gratefully, submissively. "Of course, we would have some expectations in return." "Expectations?" I prompted. "Nothing unreasonable," Veronica assured me. "Simply that you respect Marcus and Simone's space, their independence. Perhaps not visit quite so frequently. Not burden them with your concerns or needs. Allow them to build their marriage without excessive interference from extended family." Translation: take the money and disappear. Stop being an embarrassment. Stop reminding their daughter that her husband comes from poverty. "Excessive interference," I repeated slowly. "You understand," Veronica said warmly, as though we were reaching a pleasant agreement. "Young couples need space to grow, to develop their own identity as a family unit. Constant presence from parents, particularly parents with different backgrounds, different lifestyles, can create tension, confusion, conflicting values." She was suggesting I was a bad influence, someone whose poverty and lack of sophistication might contaminate their daughter's elevated existence. Franklin nodded sagely. "We're thinking of everyone's best interests here, Elara. Including yours. Financial security in exchange for giving the young people breathing room, it's a reasonable arrangement." Marcus's face had gone pale with fury. This is absolutely unacceptable. Marcus, Veronica interrupted sharply. This is an adult conversation. Your mother is perfectly capable of making her own decisions. She turned back to me. Isn't that right, Ilara? You can see the sense in our proposal. I folded my hands on the table, looked down at them briefly, then slowly raised my eyes to meet Veronica's gaze directly. For the first time that evening, I didn't look away. I didn't lower my eyes. I didn't maintain the subservient posture I'd adopted all night. And something in my expression made Veronica's confident smile falter slightly. That's a very interesting proposal, I said, my voice subtly different now. Firmer, clearer, no longer small or timid. Tell me, Veronica, how much did you say you'd consider a modest monthly allowance? Veronica blinked, seemingly surprised by the change in my tone but recovering quickly. We were thinking $700, as I mentioned. $700, I repeated. Per month. In exchange for me, essentially vanishing from my son's life. I wouldn't phrase it quite that way, Veronica said, a slight edge entering her voice. How would you phrase it? I asked with genuine curiosity. She shifted in her seat. As I explained, we're offering support in exchange for respecting boundaries. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. I see, I nodded slowly. And you mentioned you've helped Marcus and Simone financially. The house down payment, for instance. How much was that? Veronica looked slightly confused by the question but answered proudly, $40,000. We provided the full down payment. $40,000, I repeated. And the honeymoon? $15,000, Veronica said. 3 weeks touring Europe, France, Italy, Switzerland. We wanted them to experience the best. How generous, I said. So altogether, you've invested approximately $55,000 in their marriage. We don't consider it an investment, Franklin interjected. We consider it love. Supporting our children unconditionally. Unconditionally, I echoed. Yet you're offering me $700 monthly to conditionally stay away. Veronica's expression hardened. I don't appreciate your tone, Ilara. We're trying to help you. Are you? I asked, my voice now completely transformed, no longer weak, no longer timid, but sharp, clear, powerful. Or are you trying to buy my absence because my poverty embarrasses you? The atmosphere at the table changed instantly. Veronica's face flushed. Franklin sat up straighter. Simone's eyes widened. Marcus watched me with a mixture of shock and growing realization. I think you're misunderstanding our intentions, Veronica said icily.